Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramp, ushering you into August 23rd. It is my birthday, and I'm here to celebrate it with you, with my show, and the adoption of the City Council's fiscal year 2025 budget. Isn't that the best week to have? Anyways, for those of you who want to know a little bit more about what's happening within the city in terms of the debris cleanup is going on, and stated Monday, due to the variability of debris across the neighborhood, it's unclear how long crews will be in each neighborhood. When they finish with one neighborhood, they'll move on to the next. Schedules are estimated to make changes due to debris volume, weather, and staffing. Public Works through the City of Missoula estimates that this operation will be complete by Friday, September 6th. So quite a 15-20 minute storm, and it's taken about a little over 5 weeks to clean up a lot of the debris that was around here. But if you still have debris that needs to be dropped off, or you see some debris and you want to help some people in the neighborhood help out, you can drop it off at Garden City Compost, which is 1125 Clark Fork Lane. They're open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Larchmont Triangle. This is residential storm vegetation debris only. North Side City Lot, which is the intersection of Rogers and Shakespeare Streets off North Scott Street, resident storm vegetation only. And of course, Garden City Compost is accepting commercial and residential storm vegetation, while residential storm vegetation debris is essentially just like the leaves that fall from your trees and whatnot. So if you want to help, residents who want to help others with the storm cleanup can go to the volunteermissoula.org to sign up. Households that missed a pickup in their neighborhoods can call the city's street division at 552-6360. Again, 406-552-6360. All right, we're going to jump right into budget and finance, because this is a committee meeting they actually had Monday before they actually had the initial city council meeting where they approved the budget of the year. And so committee meeting met Monday afternoon before 6 p.m.'s regular meeting to top up a series of amendments to fund many programs per city council member Bob Campbell's request. Daniel Carlino wanted to a couple added to the budget, with Sandra Versica also looking to fund some of the programs in the city, including the Johnson Street shelter. So Sandra Versica, City Council, talks a little bit more about her reasoning behind the Johnson Street shelter.
Originally intended as a one-year solution on my first year on council, it is now my 5th year on council. It has led to several detrimental effects in the neighborhood. Property crime rates in the surrounding area have risen significantly, burdening residents and businesses. Taxpayers now bear the financial strain of maintaining the shelter beyond its initial budget. Moreover, safety concerns have escalated due to the disposal of drug needles and condoms in the nearby parks, preventing children from safely using those nearby parks and trails. The shelter is proposed to be funded using the emergency levy, which I believe we'll be voting on later tonight, contributions from Missoula County, and ARPA funds to the tune of just over $1.8 million.
All right, so many of the reasonings, and a lot of constituents have been complaining about this particular area for quite some time. The city talked back and forth about this for a lot of time to tell about what the future of the site would be, and so far they phased it in 2 phases. The first phase was initially the railroad park, and that's what they have on half of it, and then Johnson Street shelter, they plan on tearing it down by the late 2025, and that was their initial plan for like a 3-year plan to get rid of the Johnson Street shelter as a whole, as they're looking for other avenues to have people at a certain place. But many of the concerns of heightened police presence were calls from homeless folks against one another, rather than it being a recent police report a couple months ago, where the police chief was talking a little bit more about this, about how a lot of these property crimes and all that stuff had to do with people's personal properties from the Johnson Street shelter. So Aaron P. in Housing and Community Planning responds to some of the questions about this amendment.
It continues to serve a critical need in Missoula today. Having this funding allows us to maintain 165 additional shelter beds at the Johnson Street temporary shelter, and it helps us meet additional short-term goals, one of which is to provide that safe, warm, 24/7 environment to keep our neighbors safely sheltered, especially during adverse weather events, which are happening more frequently in the summer alongside the winter cold months. It provides
not to mention, along with that information, one of the major things coming out of it was the fact that when they closed the shelter in spring of 2023, essentially the the population kind of went through the parks, and there was a huge upheaval of people complaining about the use of parks and trails and river access and stuff like that. The whole idea is that the Johnson Street Shelter essentially hid away the homeless population in a more controlled area rather than it just going all over the place in the city of Missoula, which is why the emergency levy was put into place last summer by our former mayor, interim mayor, Jordan Hess, and then which led to this moment now where they're talking about potentially having this levy moving forward within the city council, which I'll talk a little bit later. So many questions arise, and Gwen Jones, city council, spoke on this, and she's spoke on this ad nauseum, and she explains the position of having these shelters.
Totally agree that Johnson Street Shelter is not a long-term solution. It is a short-term solution, basically to getting people sheltered and off the streets. And most important priority for me is getting them through the winter without freezing on the streets. That's always been the goal of Johnson since we had to tip it up. My hope is our unhoused population decreases in numbers sufficiently so that our pre-existing infrastructure with the Poverello, and now we've got Meadowlark added in and all sorts of other temporary safe outdoor shelter, that those entities can adequately handle our unhoused population. Right now, we have way more than that, but this is also happening many places across the West and across America. So we're in the middle of it, and the pandemic was part of that equation, but there were other things that led to it. So,
yep, and not to mention, especially during the 2020 housing assessment, not to mention the state's assessment, which raised a lot of the prices of housing. So the people who weren't originally homeless, who actually were struggling, are now more considered homeless, and those who were homeless are now more chronically homeless. So it's really just like a push-down effect when it comes to just the standard of living in the city of Missoula. And, you know, the overall pleasantness was a result of last year's seasonal closure of the Johnson Street Shelter, which prompted the extension of the year-long shelter using some of the ARPA money. But like, you know, the 2025, that's a big thing, is like 2025 is a big year where most of the money that was supposed to be allocated through the American Rescue Plan funds through the federal government to mitigate these kinds of problems are sunsetting by 2025. So there's a lot of stuff like that. And for the regular Monday meeting of the City Council, the big bad budget was looking for approval. Apart from the regular item, the city was looking to approve another emergency levy to the budget for the ongoing cost to address emergency sheltering in Missoula. Andrea Davis talks a little bit more about this.
And I mentioned before that we operate with restricted funding because our primary revenue source is property taxes in our general fund that is restricted to half the rate of inflation. This year, we are managing the end of our ARPA dollars, and so we're conscious of what that means going forward. And I talked about this in the original budget presentation, so I wanted to make sure I address it tonight. It's important as a city that we maintain cash reserves. We are evaluated on our strength of our bonding, and we bond for things like infrastructure, and our financial performance. Cash reserves is one of those financial performance realities. Our target at the City of Missoula is 7% of ongoing revenues, and because ongoing revenues do increase every year, that changes every year. So for FY25, 7% would be $4.9 million. This budget achieves a balance at $2 million. And that is similar to previous years. So I'm being fully transparent. I really want the public and you to know that it is a goal of mine to increase this fund reserve because it matters to me that we have a strong financial footing for the financial solvency and functioning of the city.
Yep, one would call that a rainy day fund. Let's see, let's refer back to my notes. Overall, the biggest impacts of the budget relate to grants, bonds, and levies that impact budget at any time during the year with quarterly updates and, if need be, continued updates to budgets as money comes and goes out of the event of an emergency, much like the storm of July, which saw emergencies services used through a 75% reimbursement to the federal FEMA dollars. So with the budget in place, Mayor talks about tax increases per the state's tax rate. And so this is essentially how much you'll be paying more for your city property taxes.
down to brass tacks, what are the tax impacts for people? The annual cost includes, again, the general fund, the road district, the park district, and the citizen voted fire levy. You can see that for the mayor's budget is a $25.50 increase on a $100,000 home value. And with the voted fire levy, that total is $71.31. When we equate this to the current median assessed home, which tax assessed home is different than market rate, and I think we all know that, but it's important to say. Currently, that value is $450,000. And so the total annual increase for a median tax assessed home is $320.88. That equates to about 80 cents a day. Again, I want to say that we were really judicious in this mayor's budget and this executive budget. You know, knowing that the voter-passed fire levy funded very important things for our community, we wanted to be very careful with what the mayor's budget added on top of that.
Okay, and so they had to increase the budget to cover most of the fees and everything like that, $320, which roughly takes out a chunk of property tax rebate, which tops out at $675 if you haven't already signed up for your tax rebates. And of course, as she went on about fire station, as they plan to pay more and retaining 20 new firefighters along with that firefighting levy, a new fire station totaling 6 fire stations in the city of Missoula, and according to a 2020 study, there are about 1.5 to 1.8 firefighters per 1,000 people, along with an emergency levy around $400,000 for shelters was introduced to continue the Johnson Street shelter through September. So far, if this levy wasn't going to pass, which it did, spoiler, then the funding would have, the Johnson Street shelter would have closed by end of September. So Clint Whittle Frazier gave a comment on money for shelters, and this is what he had to say.
Having more shelter options for folks, as I know you've already discussed it, the shelter earlier today, is just really important. I did learn a fun fact about, so New York City and San Francisco have about the same amount of unsheltered folks in those cities. However, one city, San Francisco, has it way more visible there and more of a problem there because they have way less shelter beds than New York City has, that has a lot more options for people to get out of the street and access to more resources that's better for them. I didn't know that because I associate San Francisco as having an awful crisis going on. So I thought that was really cool that just having more shelter options really help people in places like New York City. So I think it's a really good positive direction to go. Thanks.
Yep, and with more shelter beds and having that kind of thing, not to mention you have shelters in general where you have what's considered a point of contact for homeless folks, because otherwise if they're so spread out, it's kind of really hard to navigate those folks unless they stand out for one reason or another. The money going to shelters and options is very different between the seen homeless and unseen. Missoula has a growing number of vehicle living, which is much harder to spot unless you live in neighborhoods that notice new cars not moving for long periods of time. Stacey Anderson, City Council, talks further on this particular levy, and this is what she had to say.
But to me, the value in voting for this one-time levy addresses the immediate need, but also gives us the flexibility to know this need won't always be the case, and therefore mindful of passing it one time. It's a one-time increase, and then it's not added in year over year over year. And I think we've all been around long enough to know that it's very rarely that we have an opportunity to do a big tax decrease because of the nature of how our tax system works. So therefore, having the opportunity to do it one time and then bring it back down and kind of start the process over again for next year's budget without this being in the base budget seems to me to make the most common sense.
All right, and so basically they want to do short-term money that have long-lasting impacts rather than it adjusting the major budget that will eventually continue and increase along with the budget. Hey, if you think about it like this, back in 2018, if not a little bit sooner, the city of Missoula were weighing the options whether or not to even have a winter warming shelter in the first place. And for the most part, the city of Missoula was so disconnected by the idea of homelessness beyond just having the avatar, which is the Poverello Center, which is like the city shelter within the city of Missoula, Salvation Army stepped up, became the winter warming shelter. City of Missoula, in partnership with Poverty Center, pooled the resources together. City added about, basically just to open the winter warming shelter at Johnson Street, it was just a $50,000 added to that at that particular time. And then of course, the pandemic happened, and then it just kind of exploded along with people losing their housing. And the levy is supposed to be a blast of money to prevent current funding increases. Many of the budget issues from the closure of Johnson Street Shelter in 2023 resulted in issues in parks, trails, and corridors. Missouri having spent increased amounts of money through reactive services rather than preventative service that impacts homelessness in our parks. The city voted 11-1 in favor of the emergency shelter levy. And now Gwen Jones City talks about the budget and how property taxes reflect an older era, and just kind of getting a little bit of a background on how the state of Montana has to fix our tax system, basically from the old time mining, logging, and just factory kind of towns and industry to now becoming more of a touristy kind of a state.
Structurally, our property taxes have changed greatly over the last 10 to 20 years, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And other cities in Montana are feeling it. Our economy has changed, industries have changed, the legislature has passed laws changing the fact that certain entities put a lot less into the city revenue and local government revenue and MCPS revenue via property taxes, because laws have changed what those entities pay into, and the burden has shifted onto residential and commercial property tax payers. It's being felt across the state. It's in other cities across Montana. That's why the governor set up a property tax task force, because there's a big issue in Montana in that our property taxes are not working anymore to fund local government and local schools. We have a big problem, and I think it's going to take, 2, 4, 6 years before finally it gets addressed. But until then, every year it gets harder and harder to make all of these systems function in our local governments and our schools.
All right. Well, the unfavorable opinion of mine to fix the tax system in this state of Montana would have to be the dreary sales tax, because we're becoming more and more of a touristy town, and the sales tax would be the only option to have that additional revenue, because the idea behind that would essentially have, or even have a tourist tax for bigger cities that have a lot of tourism. And that was one of the things that was floated from Missoula County, because we have any average about 3.5 million people coming through the city of Missoula through vacationing, using our services and stuff like that. And they don't contribute to our services, they just contribute to the pockets of the people that they pay to stay here for. So that is just one of those things, is that do you want them to pay directly to the city, or do you want them to pay indirectly from the business owners and the people who live in the city of Missoula as a result? So I'm just saying is that the state of Montana is changing, and that would probably be the best option for Montana. But unfortunately, that's been such a sour taste in the state of Montana, because basically, if you want political suicide in the state of Montana, float sales tax. All right, moving on. As we get a little bit further into this, we're going to talk a little bit about Sandra Vasica, who is the kind of like the one on city council, who is the quote unquote no vote for most things, in which when the city does spending in the city of Missoula. So this is what she had to say about the budget.
So any increase in property taxes is an additional burden to our neighbors. Had my colleagues passed even one of the proposed budget amendments to reduce spending, I most likely would have been in support of this overall budget. However, since they did not, I cannot in good conscience lend my support. I anticipate some criticism of my vote against this budget, given that it is only a 5.84% increase compared to other more drastic years, and an argument could be made that I will never be satisfied with any budget that has increases over keeping up with the rate of inflation. However, it is my prerogative to vote according to my convictions, and I am in the position to do so, so I will not be in support of this budget.
Yeah, not to mention it feels very gaslighty when people start saying is like, it's the least increase this year round compared to other years. It's like, okay, so the fact that it's increasing is not fun for anyone. So anyways, moving on, Daniel Carlino, City Council, leans more towards the city not doing enough, but had to relearn the budget constraints that he and the city is under to help the people of Missoula. He introduced a couple of amendments to the process that didn't pass, and this is his reflection on how he feels about the budget.
Only 5 members of the City Council voted yes on any budget amendments, which made it impossible to pass any budget amendments when only 5 members were willing to vote yes on any. The rest of the council not only didn't vote for any budget amendments, not even one, they also didn't introduce any budget amendments. So there were 0 budget amendments passed. And that means the legislative branch, frankly, just didn't fulfill our duties. People in Missoula get to elect us to help decide how the tax money is spent, and we didn't do our job when it came to the session by having the majority not vote for a single budget amendment and not introduce any budget amendments. Therefore, we passed 0 budget amendments.
Okay. And to counter Daniel's claims about not passing those budget, just so you know, a lot of the amendments, especially the ones that are kind of like last minute amendment items, they have a lower chance of passing than the budget in terms of Budget and Finance Committee meetings, which starts in early 2024, where they talk about 2025. So they're working on this process for quite some time, but when you add those amendments towards the end of the budget season, it has a lower chance of being part of that because it can impact the regular overall budget. And many of the amendments had to do with overhauling sidewalks, so most homes wouldn't have to lean on their homes if they cannot pay. Daniel Carlino has been working on this, but I haven't heard too much about it for the last month or so. It was definitely wishful thinking at the time, and it just didn't really pan out because there's no realistic plan. However, many of the presentations have gone through process under the mayor as they spoke about the budget since early 2024, but most of the work the city did was finished before the last month, where Daniel Carlino introduced some of those line budget items that were not going to pass. It was kind of like an idea of doomed to fail in a lot of ways, and Mike Nugent, City Council, counters Daniel Carlino's argument on those bases.
Where everybody's frustrations are on this, and I will support this budget because, government has to function. And at the end of all of that, at the end of everybody giving feedback to the mayor presenting a budget, amendments being offered, and part of doing our job is voting yes and no on amendments. We still have to run government, and we still need to pay our workers. We still need to make sure that they have competitive salaries, that they have health care, that we need to support our police, our fire, our public health, our parks, and our streets, our maintenance department. And that doesn't happen unless enough of us vote for the budget. And that is what we're doing. That's what the majority of us are going to do here in a few minutes. And, like I said, I appreciate the comments from a few of my council colleagues for explaining what their no votes are and being able to back up those no votes with constructive, I think, contributions to this conversation. And, for everybody else, I think it's easy to sit there while other people make sure that the programs we support as a community get funded and get done. And I thank you for standing up for that. And I look forward to working on the next one with you. We'll take a week off or so, and then we'll start again.
All right. So the budget season is wrapped up, and they voted 8-4 in approval of the fiscal year 2025 budget. And there completes that portion of my city council. As we actually dive into a new controversial item through the land use and planning meeting, the Aspire development in East Missoula. And so this is a kind of like a built-in annex system, and it's slated for annexation. And this is a large area that has caused developers to salivate and current East Missoula residents to take concern on the impact of growth that is already affecting Missoula city neighborhoods. And while they're not technically part of the city, they feel as though that the planning through the county city planning board is not listened to their concerns about development in terms of how dense and how their city aesthetic or their neighborhood aesthetic will spread to these outskirts of Missoula, as the county of Missoula pledges to deliver 1,000 new dwelling units a year to keep up with population growth in the city of Missoula. Now, he gave you those clip notes. Here is Doug DeGrandpay talking about annexation, and it is with CPDI.
There is an interlocal agreement between the city of Missoula and the East Missoula Sewer District. It was formalized or adopted in I think it was the year 2000, then recently updated. And it's essentially saying that the city won't reach out and annex properties. The city provides sewer and water services to those properties, or to the district, I guess, and then the property owners after that. But the agreement says that the city won't reach out and annex those properties by way of providing services. Instead, the agreement says that the property owners may choose to annex or petition the city to annex into the city limits, and that's what happened in this case. So,
all right, so as we get further into this meeting, it's kind of like the city wants to prevent any additional expenditures on the property's infrastructure, which is why they wanted to be part of a city code of rezoning. This would effectively be a pre-annexed lot of land when they fully develop this site. Many of the reasons why East Missoula as a whole hasn't been annexed is because of the infrastructure issues. One could even say the expansion of the East Broadway corridor into East Missoula is the infrastructure improvement leading to rural development areas. So this is like a big grant that's being part of a federal Build Back Better grant, but this is just another parcel of land that is being looked at. And Dave DeGrampe talks about traffic on Summer Street, and this is one of the biggest things about developing a fairly large neighborhood that's going to consist of potentially 3,500 new people in the long run. And so this is their reflection on the street that would be used to connect to, you know, Highway 200, which would effectively go to Broadway and the greater East Missoula corridor to the city of Missoula.
it is a 2-lane paved roadway, informal parking lanes on both sides, no stormwater facilities, no sidewalks. And so currently, the traffic impact study, originally written in 2001, estimated approximately 800 vehicle trips per day down Summer Street. And so, as you may recall, one of the conditions of approval is for the developer to improve Summer Street by building parking lanes, building sidewalks, and also stormwater facilities. So,
as you can see here, this is essentially what they want to render and want to create for this particular area on the sidewalk off of Summer Street. So if you're not familiar with the street, it's just being able to develop more than one thing at the particular time to do this. Moving on, these kinds of developments tend to have overhaul of areas, and if you were here last week, many developers stated this would be their biggest project of their careers. They said that the traffic impact would solve within the next 10 years. They'll be developing this site. So Ryan Sudsbury talks annexation laws and how it kind of fits in.
Through the provision of utility services, can annex as a condition of continuing those utility services. So when the city put the sewer main out there, the city wanted to make sure the residents of the area knew that they could access the sewer and use it without threat of the city coming in and using that as justification to annex those properties. So they entered into this agreement. That does not stop somebody from voluntarily agreeing to be annexed, irrespective of whether they're within the property that's covered by the agreement. But I don't know if this specific property is in there. I think it is because it has access to the sewer, but I don't know 100%. Maybe Dave can weigh in on that.
Well, you actually answered my follow-up question, which was regardless of that, if this individual property owner wants to be annexed, there's nothing in that agreement, because we've seen a lot of public comment even since last week, people asking about that. So
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Next question.
All right. So, there's a lot of talk about annexation back and forth. And besides, the strip of development has gone through the county process, through the city-county planning board, as the go-ahead to rezone with the city standards. It's hard to fight annexation when the residents in the lot don't exist yet. It's actually a very clever way to annex without consulting residents that don't even exist in the parcel compared to the community which falls into the county. So Dave DeGrampe spoke more on annexation and the need for population growth.
but it's the conditions. Many of the conditions haven't changed all that much. You know, housing needs back in 2015 were substantial. The cost of housing was outpacing wages. We know that that's still the case, and it's continued to be the case. Our current growth policy effort indicates that we need approximately 1,000 homes to be built a year between now and 2045. So, and it also points, so that's one fundamental issue. The second fundamental issue is the growth policy points toward an efficient growth pattern, infill type development. And so that means development that's on city utilities, sewer, water that's near services and in developed areas, as opposed to continually expanding outward in greenfield development. So our plans that we've made and adopted call for this very type of development. And specifically on this property, our growth policy calls for residential development at a density of 3 to 11 dwelling units per acre. And so city staff feels like if we're going to go through the effort and expense to make all these plans, when we get a developer who's willing to do what we ask, extend facilities, ameliorate or mitigate some of the impacts off site, then we've talked about, again, a predictable development process where the rules are set, where the plans are made, the rules then are set, and when developers propose to adhere to those rules, then we really should follow through in order to make sure that we have a predictable development process. Of course,
All right, so that was one of the things that they were talking about for quite some time. This development process actually started in 2021, and just over the last 13 months, the planning board were able to move it, and this is why now it's within the viewpoint of the city of Missoula. This is all based on trends of growth in the city of Missoula, which has a growth rate of about 1.44% according to the internet. But over the nearly 80,000 people in the city of Missoula, that's roughly about 1,100 new people every year for our fair city of Missoula. And speaking for East Missoula, some of the residents are concerned about this, and they talk about Summer Street a little bit further about the current impact of traffic, and this is what one of them had to say.
Very directly affected by this project. I know that that's gone around a lot, but we talk about traffic studies, everything. I have maybe 20 to 30 vehicles per day in front of my home. We're talking about 2,100 vehicles per day. It's going to be a big change to our community and what's going on. And as we go through this development, what we've asked for over and over is a dispersal of traffic. That includes adding Robinson. It includes possibilities of additions to Waterside Drive. Those homes are set back from that street and have property to be able to make that a better access point.
Of course, I did gloss over a lot of the details of this development, and I'm just giving you kind of the cliff notes of this, but I also wanted to make it clear that traffic impact is the major issue, as part of the town has very rough access through residential to main streets and a community just off the highway and near the railroad. He believes that the subdivision doesn't work and developers are kicking the can down the road for approval. It is interesting times we live in as developers are trying to keep up with the demand and finding any and all available lots are being sought after as a result. And so, because the demand for developers is so high and the demand for housing is just so vast in the state of Montana, many developers have had to go out of state to have another group to help plan, engineers, developers, and more of that stuff. And Dave Sampson, the developer, addresses some of the issues that were brought up during comments, and this is what he had to say in response.
As far as the power lines are concerned, we reviewed that with Northwest Energy and the city and county of Missoula. And again, because of the age of the existing community with all the overhead services, it's not consistent with state and regulatory policies to go in and underground all those, because it would have to change all the electrical services on all the existing homes. But in fact, Public Works and with both the city and the county felt that with some of the efforts for traffic calming and adding more parking and those kinds of things, that creating the bulb outs was a good utilization, and it's also done throughout town. And to also utilize the financial resources that needed to be dedicated to upgrade this extensive amount of road, which is over 2,000 feet from our entrance to Highway 200, to take those resources and put them into the road improvements. And
all right, and so that was one of the developers, Dave Sampson, and sometimes some of the greater issues surrounding the area shouldn't relate to the direct development, since the point is to create housing and to build out infrastructure, which includes road improvement in the area, which the city clarified with the county and those traffic studies and engineers. Then again, speaking for the people of East Missoula, this is a big development that's being proposed in their area. East Missoula is a community district out of the county of Missoula. It's so close to the city of Missoula, but they have very little to no say in how the city operates and runs the rezoning on this particular issue. This is yet another area looking to add housing, and a dart basically hitting the board of development for the East Missoula lot. And so far, this will move to Monday. For more information, you can go to the ci.missoula.mt.us. This was a 2-hour meeting. It was a long topic, and they worked out some of the details. They're even talking about some of the embankments and some of the river access from the site as well. I didn't want to get into that because there's too many of the smaller detail type stuff, but one of the bigger impacts was traffic. He was speaking a little bit more about electrical, overhead wires, underground wires. They're trying to talk about building that, but they basically have virgin land. They're trying to figure out how they're going to add some sewer infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. And many of the reasons why it's becoming more of a city thing is because the East Missoula annexation as a whole is going to be like a 2034, 2035 annexation down the road, which is something that the East Missoula has been expecting for quite some time. It's not something that people a lot of times want, and of course the city attorney Ryan Sesberry was quoted in saying in this particular meeting that just because you get city water and sewer doesn't mean you automatically have to opt into annexation. Again, with all these developments and everything happening with the city of Missoula, it's hard to keep track of all this stuff, but you can go to engagemissoula.com. is yet another great resource for those developments slated in Missoula and beyond. Up next, we have a fun video from our summer documentary class, and we also have a premiere of a new promo, which I'll show to you guys right now.
So this is the Slide Rock Lookout. It was built in 1934 on Slide Rock Mountain, which is about 30 miles southeast of Missoula. This is an L4 lookout. It was sort of the pinnacle of fire finding and fighting as far as lookouts go. So a lot of these were built by the CCC. There was approximately 600 or so of them in Montana at one time. That number has gone down substantially. But these did a lot of service in fighting fires from the 1930s all the way into the 1980s in a lot of cases. Some are still in use today, but firefighting methods have kind of really come a long way from the lookout. So the basic life of a lookout, again, you'd be hired to stay up here all summer long. You basically would be camping out here. Some of the early lookouts were little cabins, and then you'd come up into one of these towers to look for fires. But by the time this design was developed, they had come up with the idea of just living in your observation tower. So some of the cool things about this, the L4 lookout was designed in Missoula, believe it or not. But it's got a 360-degree view of your surroundings, makes it way easier to find fires. But again, you're stuck up here all summer long. You'd get periodically resupplied, but by and large, once you're out here, you're out here. So this is the Osborne Fire Finder. This is probably the most important piece of equipment up here in a fire lookout. These were developed around 1917 and were used all the way up until the 90s. Again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But really, really cool piece of fire finding technology. If you could see it, there's a little roundel map right in the center of it. The needle is always where your lookout is. That's how you know where you are. The ruler is distance, about 1 inch to every mile. Our crosshairs, and then, of course, our little brass slide to determine altitude. So say we've got a fire that we've spotted. Our job is to take our fire finder, get the crosshair on that fire, and then adjust our slide. There's a little peephole sight. You line that up with your crosshair and your fire. You take your reading, you take your heading, you call it in. There's a phone attached to the fire finder. You'd call it in, let them know your numbers, your figures there. And from there, your ranger station is going to be able to pinpoint where that fire is.
There are a number of lookouts in any given area because you can't see everything at the same time. And multiple lookouts calling in the same fire allows folks to actually pinpoint where it really is.
All right.
So one of the tools for that, if you're interested, so this is how you triangulate a fire. So say that this is our lookout, this is another lookout close by. They call in their fire, I call in mine. Where the lines intersect is where your fire is. Pretty simple.
Robots fighting the evil Skellymen.
You never steal our Bubble Hill, Skellyman. I will take over the Bubble Hills. Go, robots!
MCAT Animation Drop-In Workshops every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. located in the Missoula Public Library, 455 East Main Street.
I'll get you next time, robots. Next time! Go, robots!
Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. Kicking off with The Crow. Basically, this is just one of those series of movies where they're just kind of running out of Hollywood's playbook of rebooting films, come get in the tale of a broken love that gets pushed to the edge, and supernatural forces interviewing the wronged emo guy who decides to do a mass shooting because of his girlfriend who gets killed. What started out as a co-ed prison love story comes a story of tragedy depicting of grief in the form of a faithless remake with plenty of special effects and eyeliner that would make the band Green Day blush. Enjoy tropes of revenge as otherwise this would glorify gun violence, which kind of does. Don't get me wrong, it totally does. But since they killed someone he loved, he's going to get revenge on all the people, and I assume his death-proof powers will get him to the final boss where he struggles and wins only to die in the end because he got his revenge. Revenge is bittersweet. Blink Twice. Oh, wait. Nope. Blink Twice. This is a basically dementia gaslighting as a group of young something-year-olds go to an island of an eccentric billionaire. And when they begin to disappear, the guy's like, they never existed. And everyone's like, that's right, they never existed, but I feel like someone or something was missing. Hence the thriller drama Blink Twice, because when you stare at something long enough, you have to blink, and I assume there is some reference to the title of some kind of villain speech. The final girl escapes and everyone probably dies. Gaslighting is always a good concept for a thriller. Then we got a couple movies that are coming out. I'm going to speed right through these. The Forge. The boring trailer shows a guy who is raised by his mom and has to deal with becoming a man who is aimless with the help of a God-fearing grandma and strong male role models to guide him on his journey. Then we got Between the Temples. A Jewish cantor has a crisis of faith, and through the power of funny drama and a lot of drama that makes this look funny, is able to be the best cantor a cantor can be. Then we got Greedy People. Small town gets in way over the head with a bunch of money from big city kind of stuff, and then even the sheriff's deputies want to take money for themselves at all costs. Easy score. So the murderer isn't actually the murderer, and too many guilty people are looking for themselves over some rich cheater who got herself killed rather than a good talking to. All right, so those are the movies that are essentially coming out this way. And we have a new dub and stuff for you guys from the 1951 movie, The Prowler.
All right, I'm going to have to put up my legs, and that's all for today. All right, come in.
Well, don't you mean, excuse you?
Oh, it's you. Sorry about that.
I love you. Oh, where were you? Woo, woo, wee, woo, woo, woo. Why didn't you call me? Why did you say anything? Why did you even write or a telegram? Have that annoying guy just come in and just say stop instead of natural pauses? It's so weird.
Oh,
and then he has a dumb suit on.
All right, I think we're getting off topic.
Let's talk about my stuff first.
Listen, I'm still on the run.
Still? You know, at some point, they're going to stop chasing you. Isn't that how it works?
Well, not unless my debt is worth more than they're putting into finding me, and I don't think that's ever going to happen because...
there must be something. I can do something. Come on. I can wrestle them down. I can hug them to death.
Oh, darling, you just don't understand. Hugs cannot save the world, but hugs just make me feel just a little bit better for a short while. Now, I gotta ask you this question. Did you bring Uno? Because
Why would you want to have Uno at a time like this? The Mexican drug cartel's after you. Four Locos.
How many times do I have to tell you that Four Locos isn't a gang? This is a very serious situation. I needed that Uno reverse card. Perhaps maybe you can go to the store? I think they're in the third aisle of that supermarket that's just down the street. Maybe you can help me out with that. It's a convenience store, but bigger.
It's so big.
I don't know what color they have, but I'm going to need all the kinds of reverse cards if I'm going to turn this thing around against the gang. And even if I play it, there's no guarantee that they're not going to play another reverse card on me. Or heck, even skip my turn. I'll never get to Uno.
Oh, no, it's okay. You can always hide the fact that you have an Uno, and then they won't know, and then you...
That's not how the game is played.
Well, maybe if you establish your own house rules where that doesn't apply, maybe you can get away with it. Or maybe you just play dumb and think that you weren't supposed to say Uno when you're supposed to say Uno, and maybe you can win by that way. I know you don't like stacking, but draw fours and draw twos should belong together.
Woo! Now I can relax. Yoink! Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some things that are happening in and around the world. Everything. You know, something interesting is happening in terms of the abortion front in the state of Montana, as licensing through the state might be used as a way for anti-abortion legislation to squeeze through a very hot topic. Montana Free Press reported on House Bill 937, which would have government-run health department regulation on how abortion clinics run, including the presence of a physician rather than a medical officer to perform surgery or administer the abortion pill. Opponents say that this rule will single abortion clinics from other private physicians' offices for license and the amount of what abortion rights refer to as trap laws, or targeted restriction of abortion providers, aimed at eventually closing clinics down. So imagine that you have to have more physicians, you have to pay more, and by paying more, your clinic starts becoming a little bit more top-heavy and becomes a little bit more hard to sustain. 6 proponents spoke in favor of these regulations, including 2 physicians affiliated with the Charlotte Lozier Institute, an anti-abortion think tank and policy group, and a representative of the Montana Family Foundation, which backs restrictive abortion bills in Montana, including HB 937. Part of the requirements that directs abortion providers to obtain a physical examination of patients, arguing that the standard would prohibit mailing abortion medicine and having telemedicine consultations. In many ways, heavy regulation and requirements could lead to more expensive facilities that are dealing with budget problems as grants get targeted, and many deep pockets push for laws like this to pass, because in Montana, if or when someone gets an abortion is no one's business because of our state constitution, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and of course the emphasis on privacy. That last one was important because many legislations tried to ban the practice outright, but the Montana Supreme Court overturned this, and that so far this is still in courts as the state looks to this bill to see if these regulations or restrictions have merit on the organizations that perform these actions. And also, today is the deadline. You can send emails to the Montana Free Press on this particular item. The DNC is in Chicago this week, and bigwigs of the Democratic Party, from former presidents to celebrities, all that kind of stuff. You probably heard all about it, everything like that. When the media says an unscheduled visit by Kamala Harris, you know it's a scheduled visit. You know, it's like you can't have the vice president and the president in the same place without at least the Secret Service knowing, so the unscheduled visit kind of feels like gaslighting. But anyways, although the protesters in the area were for a ceasefire and the support for the Palestinians going into the election, as many organizations want to believe Harris will have a different approach on this war than Biden has in the last 10 months. I haven't spoken about this too much on my show because I try to remain a little as local as I can, especially
lately, as Montana has very little impact on policies and president elections, since they only have 4 points to the electoral vote. And these are, these are the times for politicians and lip service to distract or annoy your screen time for the next couple months going into the November elections. And, speaking of elections, my boss, Joel Baer, general manager of MCAT, will be interviewing state house reps on their challengers as these upcoming state legislature is looking to be quite a rude awakening for the current order. They raised our property taxes. A lot of people are not happy about it, and the state has to solve this problem, and it looks like there might be an overhaul of people. And my boss, Joel Baer, will be aiming to interview about 20 plus candidates representing 89 wards, representing districts 89 to 100, where that represents 10,000 people each. Politics in a nutshell, and I feel sick. All right, so those are the kind of things that are happening around town and whatnot. I might just go to Missoula Current right now, just to kind of give you a little bit of notes. I have about 10 more minutes. One other thing is that there's going to be another subdivision up the South Hills with 450 units, that clearing planning board. And so this is yet another one of those big developments that are being proposed in these areas. The Wood Route phased subdivision is proposed off Hillview Way, off Rimmel Road on the 106 acres within Moose Can Gully. This project is proposing 450 units on 248 lots and will include single and multi-family housing along with townhouses. And so this is kind of like one of those things that we'll look at the idea of how they're going to phase this out. Here's a link. Here's a look at what the picture that they sent. You see all these different phases. Looks like phase 1 is going to be completed by 2026, and phase 7 is going to be completed all the way in 2044. And most of the stuff is like one of those things that is trying to build up and out, but not necessarily as dense as you might think, because this is a pretty large area. City staff has recommended approval of projects with roughly 48 conditions. All 7 phases of the projects are scheduled within the next 20 years. Once finished, it will include 21 townhouses, 226 single-family lots, and 1 multifamily lot with 203 units. So this is going to be a pretty major subdivision, but it's going to be a 20-year deal, and so that's kind of what's happening in the immediate sense of Missoula. Of course, there's always something happening. Missoula Current, you can go to Montana Free Press. Those are the kind of things that I always reference. Not to mention I go NPR and AP News just for my background, just to kind of give you a glimpse on what's kind of happening in the media and just kind of giving my own kind of version of the take and how I kind of feel about some things. Even though I try to remain as unbiased as I can, but anyways, let's talk about some events that are happening within the city of Missoula. And it's last weekend for the library scavenger hunt. Feel free to get your kids to the second floor in the library. You can win prizes and stuff like that. It's going to go on until Saturday. Also, the food bank has a lot of services for the community. It has plenty of fun things for kids to do, like story times and science programs, which is an extension of the Missoula Public Library, all starting at 10 a.m. most days. Along with food bank stuff, we also have lunch services with the Missoula Senior Center and the Paul Varela Center, looking for folks in the community having trouble accessing food beyond the food bank, starting at 11:30 a.m. And yarns and watercolor classes up on the 4th floor at the Missoula Public Library is a great way for people to get engaged with other people on watercolor or stitching, crocheting, all that kind of stuff. All Abilities Art Club, this is at Base. Base is a great opportunity for people who fall into the Americans with Disabilities, who want to be able to work with each other and work on ways to produce art in their own unique ways. Singing Overnight, musical participatory immersion. Private residence and Arlie is doing a show. They gave us the longitude and latitude code, and this is going to be interesting because it's going to be a singing overnight starting at 1 p.m. This is an intergenerational gathering to get your body grooving in singing, drumming, and more, forge new friendships, and create epic memories. Young Adults Writers Group at the Missoula Public Library on the 2nd floor. There's a great way for kids to get engaged in writing, and it's never too late and never too early to start writing. Summertime Lego Club, Imaginarium. This is going to be wrapping up sometime later this month as they move Lego Club back into Thursdays afternoons. But this is their 4 o'clock in the Imaginarium at the Missoula Public Library, all on the 2nd floor. Then we got some music happening for your Friday night. You got Lane Wilbur and the Bitter Roots. It's going to be playing some folk music at Imagination Brewing Company. Charlie Hopkins is going to be playing at the 10 Spoon Winery, playing some blues music. And then, of course, it is the full moon. This is actually a blue moon, super moon, happening this weekend long. And
happening at 7 p.m. at Sacred Alley. They're doing a full moon event where they're doing some cacao, and so they just drink some drink or partake in some highly rich chocolate and bitters, just a kind of ceremony with that. And if you don't like Sacred Alley, you can go to Acolyte Sound and Ceremony, which they're doing their own legacy cacao ceremony with sound starting at 7 p.m. So, yeah, people like their chocolate, and what better time to eat chocolate than during a full moon and making it special, right? Right? Josh Farmer is going to be at the Old Post playing some music at 7 p.m. tonight. Bright Eye Painting class is going to be painting out of a twist starting at 7 p.m. Rooted Theater, this is going to be at Zootown Arts Community Center. It's called The Harvest, tells the story of a Montana family forced to come to grips with the changing world. 6 adult children face the reality of Asian parents, the grim economic of a small family wheat farm, and the conflict of their own personalities and histories. I think they did the first one when they did Oklahoma, but anyways, that's what's happening at the Zootown Arts Community Center from today until the 24th. So it's all weekend long, so you can't miss it. All right. Let's see. Gravy Ladies is going to be playing some bluegrass music at Cranky Sam Public House. Then Tresh Bon, we're just going to have Friday, Saturday disco parties every Friday, Saturday night at 8 p.m. Block Party is going to be doing Hellgate Lodge is doing a 90s block party. And you can go to the, it's going to be doing a Bash drag show, a 90s themed drag show, the annual College of Monarchs show. The show is, will start funding a brand new Chris Inca Moore Memorial Cancer Fund, which will be for the College of Monarchs facing cancer to help with the cost of treatment. Get jiggy with us at the Hellgate Elks Lodge for Fly Time, featuring stunning performances for your favorite local drag artists, blinged out threads, and all the lip syncs that you can ever enjoy from these drag shows. The Best Westerns and Junior at Free Cycles, playing some folk music at Free Cycles starting at 8 p.m. Going to be wrapping up their summer. They'll be doing some more shows later on, but I don't see too many at Free Cycles, but when they do, it's always a fun time. Joan Zen is going to be playing some blues, miscellaneous music, some jam music at the Union Club to wrap up your Friday. And then, as always, Saturday markets are going to go well into the school year till the end of October, and where they'll transition over to the more winter market inside the Southgate Mall. But in the meantime, it's going to be out downtown. If you walk around downtown, you can't miss it. It's all over the place. River Street, Red X's, and of course, Pine Street. Rifle Ready, women-led rifle instruction. Are you a woman and you want to learn how to shoot stuff? The women-led rifle instruction at the Deer Creek Shooting Center at WMFGA is going to be hosting this starting at 9 a.m. on Saturday. English as a second language class. This is going to be an ongoing thing here at the Missoula Public Library. A great experience for people to learn English as a second language. Free financial skill building class, Homeward, starting at 10 a.m. Homeward is a great way for people who are financially insecure to get a little bit more secure in their finances and help train them to figure out how to budget better. Pet Fest, Karis Park, while you're also at the farmer's market, you can enjoy the Pet Fest where you can adopt your new family member. Guns and Hoses, softball game, the main event at Kiwanis Club Pancake Breakfast starting at 8 a.m. They have a softball game starting at 10 a.m. This is at the Oregon Park Allegiance Field where the Osprey play, the Paddleheads baseball team play. I'm so old. Butterfly release. Missoula Butterfly House and Insectarium is doing a release that night. MCAT's dance party continues at 11 a.m. And then next Saturday, we're going to reintroduce our Saturday drop-ins for the school year. Moon Randolph Homestead open hours starting at 11 a.m. They have a museum tour at Missoula Art Museum at 11. The Mile Site Market at Old Sawmill District starting at 11 a.m. at the Old Sawmill District is from 11 to 4 p.m. to celebrate local talent, discover unique handmade treasures, and more. Then we got paint your own bath bombs at Southgate Mart at noon on Saturdays. D&D for teens, Missoula Public Library online at 3 p.m. Car show, they're doing RV truck sales. This is going to be happening from 4 to 7 p.m. off Highway 93. Just truck sales. Wine and Bitch, a dog-friendly dinner. Pause up. I just wanted to say that, but dog lovers and their favorite pets won't want to miss out this exciting event. And Pause up starting at 5:30 p.m. Ten Spoon Winery is doing their acoustic music. Pack Strings at 6 p.m. Shane Coburn at 6 p.m. Folk at Imagination Brewing Company. Family movie in Spanish at Fort Missoula Regional Park at 7 p.m. They're doing Encanto all in Spanish. Or is that Spanish?
Yeah, Spanish. Okay. Ugly Pony at the Jack Saloon is going to do some country music. Tyler Childers is going to be at the University of Montana Grizzlies Stadium. Going to be a big performance by him. Karaoke at Westside Lanes, much like Charlie at Union Club. Outlaws and Lawmen at Sunrise Saloon. DJ Chris Moon every Saturday at 10 p.m. Tanner Laws at Top Hat Lounge, wrapping up your Saturday. And I'm going to wrap up my show, and I wanted to thank you guys for joining me and for Wake Up Missoula. I'm Scott Ramp. Take care and have a wonderful weekend.